All right, so our next chapter is chapter 8, which is circulation and immunity. And today we'll look at 8.1, which is structures of the circulatory system. All right, so oxygen that's breathed into the body through the lungs and the nutrients absorbed through the digestive system need to reach every cell in the body. And the transport of nutrients and waste is achieved by the circulatory system. It's a sophisticated network of blood vessels powered by the heart. In addition to transporting oxygen, carbon dioxide, nutrients, and waste, the circulatory system protects the body from foreign invaders. It prevents blood loss, and it regulates the body temperature. So the structures of the circulatory system, here we're looking at a water treatment plant. It's based on pumps, closed tubular structures or pipes, and valves. So just like this water treatment plant, it's similar, it's comparable to the circulatory system. So much like water is moved through a water treatment plant, the human body has a strong central pump, which is the heart. There's pipes of various sizes, which are the blood vessels, and there are valves in both the heart and the veins that work to move blood, including nutrients, gases, and waste through the body. So we're going to learn about the heart structure and its function, its role in circulating blood through the body, and we'll also learn about blood vessels that lead to and from the heart and help to circulate the blood. So the main functions of the circulatory system, there's three main functions. The circulatory system transports gases from the respiratory system, nutrient molecules from the digestive system, and waste materials from the excretory system. The circulatory system also regulates internal temperature and transports hormones, and the circulatory system protects against blood loss from injury and against disease-causing microbes or toxic substances that get into the body. So the three major components of the circulatory system, it's the heart, the blood vessels, and the blood. And together, the heart and blood vessels make up the cardiovascular system. The blood carries the nutrients, the oxygen, the carbon dioxide, water, waste, and many other materials throughout the body. So we're going to start by looking at the structure of the heart. So the functions of the heart include pumping blood through the body, keeping the oxygen-rich blood separate from the oxygen-poor blood, and ensuring that blood flows only in one direction through the body. The walls of the heart are made up of a special type of muscle tissue called cardiac muscle, and it's only found in the heart, nowhere else in the body. There's 4 chambers in the heart. There are two top chambers. They're called the atria. So singular would be atrium. 2 of them, atria. And they fill with blood, that's returning either from the body or the lungs. The 2 bottom chambers of the heart are called the ventricles. They receive blood from the atria and they'll pump it out to either the body or to the lungs. The atria and the ventricles are separated from each other by the thick muscular wall called the septum. And here we'll take a look at this diagram of the heart. All right, this one is an external view of the heart, and then this one here is a cross-sectional view of the human heart. All right, so here is that muscular wall I was talking about, the septum. Here are the 2 upper chambers. So we have the right atrium shown on the left side and the left atrium right here, which is shown on the right side. All right, and there's a reason why it's shown this way. It's because if you took your textbook or a picture of the heart like this and placed it against your chest, then it will be shown the correct way. All right, so we have those two upper chambers, the atria, and then we have the lower chambers here. So this chamber here, this is the right ventricle, and then this chamber here is the left ventricle. And again, it is separated by this muscular wall here called the septum. All right, this is just a little bit of a closer view showing the heart. So again, this is the right atrium. This here is the left atrium. This chamber here is the right ventricle. This chamber here is the left ventricle. All right, so the right side of the heart, which is here, it receives blood coming back from the body, and then it's going to pump this blood out to the lungs. So there's two large vessels here called the vena cava. Singular is vena cava. Vena cavae would be plural. And they opened into the right atrium. So you have the superior vena cava right here. And it collects oxygen-poor blood coming from the upper parts of the body. So the head, the chest, the arms. And it's going to bring it into the right atrium. The inferior vena cava, same thing. It's going to collect the oxygen-poor blood from the lower parts of the body, so all the lower parts like the legs, the feet, and so on. And again, it's going to come into the right atrium. This oxygen-poor blood flows from this right atrium into the right ventricle. All right, so we're in the right ventricle. And then it's going to get pumped into this pulmonary trunk right here before entering the left and right pulmonary arteries. All right, so here is the arteries, and it's going to go to the lungs. The blood will go to the lungs. All right, so from the pulmonary arteries, like I said, from here and here, the oxygen-poor blood will continue to the left and right lungs for gas exchange. These are the only arteries in the circulatory system that contain oxygen-poor blood. All right, so arteries usually contain oxygen-rich blood. These are the only arteries in the body that contain oxygen-poor blood. So the left side of the heart receives oxygen-rich blood from the left and right lungs now. All right, so we're on the left side. And it's going to pump this blood now to the body. All right, so the blood went to the lungs. It picked up oxygen, dropped off carbon dioxide. It's going to come back to the heart now by these pulmonary veins, and the blood is going to enter this left atrium. All right, so like I said, the oxygen-rich blood now will flow from the lungs through the pulmonary veins to the left atrium. And these are the only veins in the circulatory system that contain oxygenated blood, all right, or oxygen-rich blood. The left atrium will pump blood into the left ventricle, right here, and then all the blood going to the body will leave through this large vessel called the aorta. Okay, so the aorta is the largest vessel in the body. You can see there's the aorta, and then it pumps through the arteries to the upper parts of the body. And it also comes down behind, and we can see the rest of the aorta right here. All right, now we'll talk about the heart valves next. So these flappy parts here and here, here and here, those are called the heart valves. So the heart has 4 valves inside it, And these valves, their function is to ensure that blood flows in the correct direction. You don't want backflow of blood. So the atria and ventricles are separated from each other by two valves called the atrioventricular valves, right? Which makes sense because they separate the atrium and the ventricle, so they're called the atrioventricular valves. So the atrioventricular valve on the right side is called the tricuspid valve. It's made up of 3 flaps. And the atrioventricular valve on the left side is called the bicuspid valve because it only has 2 flaps. And then the other 2 valves are called semilunar valves because of their half-moon shape. I'm going to take a look here. So here, this valve here, it's the first atrioventricular valve. It's called the tricuspid valve. This one here is the atrioventricular valve called the bicuspid valve. The other 2 valves we're talking about now, which are called the semilunar valves, they look like half-moon shape. This one here is a semilunar valve, and this one here is the semilunar valve. All right, this diagram as well is showing the cross-section of a mammalian heart, showing the structure of the 4 valves. The bicuspid valve has another name. It's called the mitral valve because it's shaped like a this mitre, the ceremonial headdress worn by high officials of the Roman Catholic Church. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly. All right, so here in the middle here, we're looking at an aortic semilunar valve. This is a pulmonary semilunar valve. This one here is the bicuspid atrioventricular valve, and this one is the tricuspid atrioventricular valve. All right, so there's taking a look at the cross-section of a heart this way. All right, so next we'll look at the structure of the blood vessels. So there are 3 main types of blood vessels: the arteries, the veins, and the capillaries. Pronounced capillaries or capillaries. Arteries, they contain or carry the oxygen-rich blood away from the heart. So one way to remember arteries starts with A, and A meaning away from the heart. So arteries carry blood away from the heart. Veins carry oxygen-poor blood towards the heart. And the only exceptions, like I said before, the exceptions were the pulmonary arteries. They're the only arteries in the circulatory system that contain oxygen-poor blood. And the other exception was pulmonary veins. They're the only veins in the circulatory system that contain oxygenated blood or oxygen-rich blood. All right, and then joining each artery and vein is a network of capillaries. So blood travels from an artery into the capillaries. That's where gases, nutrients, other materials are transferred to tissue cells, and wastes, including gases, will move into the blood. The blood will then move from the capillaries into veins and then back to the heart. All right, so here we can see we have the artery, and it becomes smaller and smaller. And then here we have capillaries. This is where the exchange will happen. And then now we have oxygen-poor blood and entering the veins, which will go back to the heart. All right, red will always represent oxygen-rich blood, and then blue represents veins carrying oxygen-poor blood. And here as well, we can see that arteries and veins have 3 layers. The outer layer is a covering of connective tissue mixed with elastic tissue. The middle layer here and here, the brownish looking layer, consists of alternating circular bands of elastic tissue and smooth muscle tissue. And then the inner layer, shown here, it's only 1 cell thick, consists of flat, smooth cells. and the shape and texture of these cells serve to reduce friction as blood moves through them. And then here is a capillary. It consists of a single layer that's only one cell thick. The other thing to note here is that veins have valves, which is shown in this diagram. Arteries do not contain valves. Okay, so an artery, it has highly elastic walls. So notice here how much thicker that layer was compared to the vein. So highly elastic walls, it allows the artery to expand as a wave of blood surges through it during the contraction of the ventricles, and then to snap back again during the relaxation of the ventricles. Arteries keep the blood flowing in the right direction and provides an additional pumping motion to help force the blood through the blood vessels. When you measure your pulse, what you feel is the rhythmic expansion and contraction of an artery as blood moves through it. The veins have thinner walls than arteries and a larger inner circumference. They are not as elastic and they cannot contract to help move the blood back to the heart. Instead, the contraction of muscles keeps the blood flowing towards the heart. Veins also have valves. These are one-way valves that prevent the blood from flowing backwards. And they're especially important in your legs because they ensure that the blood flows upward to your heart against the downward pull of gravity. Okay, now sometimes a one-way valve in a vein can become weak and it doesn't close completely, and then blood can start to accumulate below the valve because not all the blood is being squeezed out of that section of the vein. So the accumulating blood increases the size of the vein and it makes it bulge out. And you may have seen those on sometimes people's legs. They have those veins bulging out. Those are called varicose veins. And this diagram here is just showing how blood is moved through the veins by contraction and relaxation of your muscles. All right, so the muscles contract, they squeeze the vein, it pushes blood past the one-way valve, then the muscles relax, and the blood in the vein begins to flow back briefly, and then the slight backward flow forces the valve closed, prevents further backflow. All right, so it's very important to always be moving and stretching and so on, especially your legs, especially if you have a job where you're just standing for long periods of time. So it's important because it's the contraction of muscles that keeps the blood flowing towards the heart. All right, this diagram is again just showing the structures of the blood vessels. So this is an artery, strong walls, capable of withstanding great pressure. The middle layer of arteries contain both muscle tissue and elastic connective tissue. Then veins here, there's lower pressure in veins. They have a thinner middle layer, but they do have the valves here shown, which prevent the backflow of blood. And then this is a cross section of an artery and a vein. So again, you can see the artery, much thicker muscular walls compared to the vein, much thinner. And lastly is capillaries. They're the smallest blood vessels, and capillaries are spread throughout the body in a fine network. And the capillary wall, it is a single layer of cells. The average diameter of a capillary is about 8 micrometers, so large enough for the largest blood cells to pass through in a single file. So here is a capillary, and we can see the red blood cells moving in a single file. Okay. All right, so we're going to pause here